Yo, on the 31st of August, I launched the Don't Kill Foreign Entrepreneurship in Japan movement, and it's been a bit more than 2 weeks since I launched the movement and the petition as an attempt at bringing awareness to a set of proposed changes to the Japanese business manager visa, which allows foreigners to have residency and run companies in Japan. I've covered both what the proposed changes are and my feelings on them quite extensively, both in the previous video on this channel, but also in the petition text and in a LinkedIn article I wrote on the matter. I will be leaving links for all of that in the description below, and please, if you like some context or you need a refresher on what's going on, go give them a read, and if any of it resonates with you, please do support the petition or go submit public comments on the proposal. One point that always really stuck with me, and the main driver for me feeling like these proposed changes really are a misfire, a slightly heavy-handed overcorrection on a, mind you, real issue, but not an issue that requires this level of destructive action, is the fact that there is a blogout rate of 94% compared to the current business manager visa holders. That means that 94% of the current 41,600 business manager visa holders in Japan would not qualify under the new rules, and I think that would be a shame. To me, this is clearly indicative that this proposed set of changes, this remake of this visa, would down the line negatively affect a lot of honest, hardworking business owners currently living in Japan, and also blog out a lot of honest, hardworking business owners who are looking to relocate to Japan, ultimately being to the deficit of both the Japanese economy, the Japanese population size, and I fear also the general entrepreneurship culture in Japan. And while I might have a pretty heavy selection bias in this regard, I do have a lot of friends, close friends, that are business manager visa holders in Japan who are currently having their residency threatened by these proposed changes that might be in trouble depending on how heavily they are implemented and enforced. And so for that reason, I thought, why not interview them? Why not get their stories? Why not hear how these changes would affect them, how it would have affected their decision to even open their business in Japan had they already been in place, and if there are any further thoughts they might have on the matter as actual business owners or prospective business owners in Japan. And yeah, so I did. I've interviewed 3 friends of mine who are all business owners in Hokkaido specifically. One of them is a startup visa alumni, currently on the business manager visa. One was in the process of getting the business manager visa, and one is a long tenured multi-year business manager visa holder who runs a business out in the countryside of Hokkaido. My hope is that by sharing these real stories of real humans, we can maybe bring a bit more attention to how damaging these proposed changes would actually be to real business owners in Japan, but also to the Japanese entrepreneurship ecosystem itself, because a lot of these people just would not have started their company here had these changes been in place. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here are 3 lovely short interviews with 3 great people running great companies up here in Hokkaido. Here with Mr. Colin Croy, founder and owner of CroyTone Audio Technologies, Sapporo, Hokkaido. First and foremostly, please introduce yourself and your business and your journey to Japan.
I'm Colin Croy. I'm from the US. My business, CroyTone Audio, is mainly focused in the repair and restoration of equipment for musicians and recording studios and live houses. Anybody that uses sound equipment for the most part. I also have my slowly growing line of my own original products that I design and make here in this shop. It's currently just me in this shop in Shidoishi, Sapporo. I ended up coming to Japan because I came here on vacation in 2019 and really liked the culture of Japan. And I've always loved Japanese instruments, mainly Japanese-made synthesizers from the 80s and 90s, and the guitars that were made in the 80s and 90s in Japan. And because I got really into repair of these synthesizers, I became a person in the US that was one of the few people that could work on these. And I thought it would be really cool to go to the source where there's so many more of these old synthesizers, help people out with keeping them working properly.
So the proposed changes to the business manager visa is a pretty hot topic amongst foreign entrepreneurs living in Japan at the moment. How would they, if implemented, let's say in full force, affect your ability to run your business or maintain your life in Japan?
The main thing that I've been really keeping an eye on with these proposed changes is how the visa renewals are going to go. As somebody who opened this business here almost 2 years ago, I'm still in the process of growing and getting to comfortable, profitable places every month. If it changes the renewal specifications to what it seems to be doing with new visas, it will cause a lot of issues in that a place like this that runs on a pretty tight bottom line with paying myself and keeping the lights on and everything like that, it's going to be very difficult to reach a point of profitability to be able to show that much capital or to hire somebody. With small businesses especially, it seems like it's going to be very difficult to, as somebody who has run a small business in the US and whose whole family runs small businesses of their own, make the bottom line is very close most of the time with most small businesses. So changing that goalpost makes it difficult to stay afloat.
If these proposed changes had been in place when you initially started planning your journey over here, would you have still made the jump to Japan, or would it have made you reconsider going here?
It definitely would have made me reconsider coming in the first place, because the proposed changes of basically 6 times the capital that they wanted you to have before makes it feel really less targeted at actual small business work. It would have made it a lot harder, and the fact that you had to hire somebody right off the bat means you're not only trying to cover your own salary but cover somebody else, and the financial and just the general pressure of have somebody else's income in mind as well makes it a lot scarier. So I don't think I would have made this jump if that were the case.
Do you have any concluding thoughts or comments to make on the matter?
One thing I've talked about before that I always feel is an interesting thing is it seems like Japan is looking for, it's high value white whale companies, Silicon Valley type companies, AI type companies. And I always think that in order to have a big business, you also have to have small business, because they support each other. You can't just have industry. You have to have shops and restaurants and things that support the actual culture of places. As stereotypical as it tends to be, how artistic culture tends to be the most ignored thing in actual financial terms by cities and governments and things like that. Big companies aren't the ones that are creating that kind of culture. It's live houses, it's recording studios, it's musicians and things like that. And so doing things like this kind of makes it to where you might get some big companies that end up just kind of killing cities, in my opinion, at least in terms of what big companies have done to cities in the US. Now, places like the West Coast are completely different than they were 40 years ago, and the foreign idea of what the West Coast is what it was 40 years ago. So, yeah, I don't know.
Beautifully put. Thank you so much for your time, brother. We are here with Matt from Chen&Coffee to talk about the proposed visa legislation changes from the Japanese government and their effect on entrepreneurship in the country. Right out the gate, could you just tell us a bit about yourself, your business, and the journey that brought you to Japan so far?
Yeah, so my name is Matt. I'm from California in the States. I've been in Japan for over 9 years now. I first came to Japan working through a non-profit organization that I was working in, taught English a bit, mostly in Osaka, before I moved out here to Japan. Moved out here to Sapporo about 3 years ago.
Could you tell us about what your business is and what you've been planning to do?
So I have been doing coffee for the last maybe like 10 plus years. First started back home in California, where I worked at a coffee shop. It was my first ever kind of like part-time job. And then right after high school, I moved to Australia, in Brisbane. And I lived there for about 3 years, where I worked/managed a coffee shop in Australia. And I always wanted, when I came to Japan, always thought that it would be super fun and awesome to actually, continue that journey of being able to do coffee in Japan. But in the beginning, I didn't speak too much. I didn't speak any Japanese until I moved here. I didn't have any coffee friends or connections. But over the course of my time here, I've been able to start doing different coffee pop-ups and making coffee for certain events. And it's kind of evolved from a small thing that was just doing in my free time and my downtime, to something that I was planning to kind of use to start a full-on business and a full-on store here in Sapporo.
Nice. And in the lead up to these proposed legislation changes, you were actually preparing to get the business manager visa. Could you tell us about that entire process and how far ahead you were in the planning at the time of the proposal being announced?
Yeah, so I was pretty far along in the process of getting the visa and stuff. And the way that it works for like food and drink and for coffee shops in particular is that in the beginning I didn't even qualify for the actual startup visa. So there was no way to like have a kind of like slower, easier transition from being like a language school student, which I was, to a startup visa to the business management visa. So what I was told by my lawyer was that it would be impossible to get the startup visa, and I had to go straight from the student visa to the business manager visa. And not only did I have to like skip that like middle step that would have made it easier for me to set up the company and get everything organized that I needed to, as I was told that in order for me to even apply for the visa, the actual store, the physical store, the coffee shop, had to pretty much be 100% completed in terms of all the equipment bought, all the construction finished, and the food and drink, like safety regulations and certification needed to be completed before I could even apply for the visa without any kind of like guarantee, so to speak, of being able to receive the visa in the future. And so I knew that going in, and I knew that it would be a risk, but at this stage and with the way that the visa was kind of set up, that was kind of unavoidable. That was the only really way to move forward with my dream of opening a store in Sapporo in Japan. So by the time that I received the news of the changes to the visa, I had already signed a 5-year contract and was only like a few days away from not only signing like a big contract for the whole entire construction of the store, but also for like a espresso machine, grinders, different kind of equipment, including like a roaster as well. So I mean, quite far along in the process, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I guess just a few days out from being a pretty significant amount of money in the hole, only for the rug to be pulled on it.
I probably would have been at least over easily, maybe like 10-15 million, not including like what I would have probably been looking to spend, even like a few months down the line when it comes to like different equipment and stuff like that. But yeah.
And that's all just to even entertain the idea of applying for the visa. Like no guarantees yet.
Yes, this is just to be able to apply for the visa.
So you're this far along, and these proposed new changes to the visa get dropped upon you and everyone else doing business here. What would for you be the ultimate outcome if they were to be passed? Like, how does this end if they get put in full effect?
So as it stands, I will not be able to I will no longer qualify for the business manager visa due to the fact that I do not have a master's or an MBA, or according to the Japanese government, the 3 years of business management experience. So I have no choice but to close my company and cancel the contract for the store and kind of do away with all the preparations and stuff that I had made for not just for myself and suppliers of all the equipment and stuff, but also for the staff that I was planning and already was, planning to hire and that were going to work for me. And I'll have to, move back to California until I guess can come back in 3 years, as long as I can get the kind of required experience that's mandated by the new changes.
So from being a good 80-90% of the way there to being blocked out by the new education requirement, I guess in this case, and that's just it. That's a lost business for Japan and for you and for Sapporo. Any concluding thoughts or comments on the matter on that cheerful note?
Yeah, well, I just think it's a bit of a shame overall because like I was so excited to do a store finally in Japan, not just for the sake of me giving me the opportunity to live in Japan, but I was looking forward to giving back to friends and community that had supported my coffee journey in Japan up until this point. Because as someone who's been doing a small business and who didn't even speak Japanese before moving to Japan, it was due to the kindness and support of Japanese community, the coffee community in Japan, that gave me the chance to even consider the idea, entertain the idea of being able to do a coffee shop in Japan. And I was looking forward to finally, through my store, to give other local small businesses and friends and people that I've come to view as family. I was looking forward to a chance to support them and give back to the community, the local community. And so not just from my point of view of not being able to live and be in Japan any longer. But I just feel it's unfortunate that, I won't be able to get a chance to give back to the community and support them in the way that I've been supported in the past. And I just think that it's such a waste of, time and money, not just on my end, but like I had friends that they were going to quit their jobs and come work for me. Japanese people who were going to quit their jobs and come work for me full time. And they were making plans, and you're getting just as excited as I was to move forward and to start a cool new coffee shop in Sapporo. And so I just feel from their side as well, I feel like it's a bit of a shame, and I feel sorry for them that they also get caught up in this situation that we find ourselves in.
And that wraps us up at pretty much a clean 10 minutes. Thank you
Cool.
so much for your time,
Yeah,
Brian,
man.
and fingers crossed that we can maybe ease up on the requirements a little bit. And for this interview, we are here with Ashley from Kamui Farms, a business out in Shakotan in the northwest of Hokkaido. And just to get us started off, Ashley, could you tell us a bit about your business and the journey that brought you to Japan?
Okay, so I came back in 2020 back to Japan. I'd spent 2 years here previously, before that time, just snowboarding and skiing, but I decided to come back and open business in 2020. As the ski resort business was starting to take off, I saw an opportunity to open my own restaurant. Unfortunately, 3 months after COVID hit, during that time, I also bought this small farm in Shakotan. My idea was to really have 2 businesses to try and keep full-time staff and have a sustainable business in Japan. But just with COVID regulations, obviously the business was killed in the ski resort and I had to close that one. So I kept the farm in Yanaka, really trying to focus on growing our own produce, becoming self-sufficient, re-establishing an old business that I took over, which was an ice cream farm and a ramen restaurant. I decided to focus more on the ice cream, and then over the years have developed a business model with animal farm, producing our own eggs, recently producing our own bacon, homemade ice cream, introducing my French bakery and just general baked goods. And yeah, that's pretty much my story up until this point. We're continuing to grow every year, re-establishing new ideas with glamping, camping, constantly reinvesting in the business, upgrading the infrastructure, and our customer base is growing because of it.
A currently very happening topic, and obviously the reason we're talking, is the proposed changes to the business manager visa framework that are currently going through processing and its public comments phase. If these proposed changes are put into effect in kind of their full scope, both with the increased capital requirements, the language proficiency / staffing requirements, the education requirements, all these things, how would it affect your ability to keep running your business and maintaining your residency as a business owner in Japan?
I probably have an interesting case. It's very, very applicable. Because when I first came back to Japan, I was working in Indonesia for 3 years. I had opened a business and ran a company for a Hong Kong-based family firm. And when I finished with them, I decided I was going to open my own business. And I kind of had the choice then whether to stay into Bali, or an opportunity came up in Japan for me to come here. And the entry requirements to open a fully foreign company in Indonesia is $1 million investment. I'm not that rich. I didn't have that money. Japan was just $50,000 or $35,000 at the time. So it really was because of the low barrier to entry and my previous time spent here that I came to Japan. Under current conditions, even with the $250,000 investment, if I was in the same position, I think it wouldn't be even a possibility for me to come. So I don't think Kamui Farm would be here, or I wouldn't have opened a business in the ski resort, which actually probably would have been a benefit to me, to be honest. But as it currently stands, I think possibly our business will be okay. We're not quite at the 30 million asset level, which is also hard to achieve, seeing as though like property prices depreciate here as well, or don't appreciate in value. So accumulating assets is really the hard way. You have to make a very, very successful business. Yeah, we're not quite at the 300 million asset level, but I think we'd be okay because, well, hopefully if a business consultant looks at it, year on year, we've had 25%, 35% growth every year since I started. And that's even during COVID times as well. But that really came from us pushing our business model, coming up with new ideas and expanding the business. So how would that relate to other people? I do see the utility in it. I do want to push business. It's always my main goal with my business, and I think other people should do it. If you're here on business manager visas, we should be trying to push business.
Yeah.
Increasing this capital only, it's hard for me to see exactly how that's going to benefit the Japanese entrepreneurship. It's only going to kill it. I don't see an alternative replacement. I think just by increasing the investment limit, that's not going to attract other investors. The thing that attracts people at the moment is the low investment, which was like my situation in the beginning, I don't see how these new rules really change that. They need to look a bit deeper into regulation, need to look at people on a one-on-one level. Like, I think growth is important. If your business is growing every year, year on year, that should be a huge, huge factor. Other things that should be taken into consideration too is that people who are repopulating these lesser dense areas like I am in Inaka, which even Japanese people aren't taking over these businesses. When I found this one, it was on the market for a couple of years and no local person, no Japanese person wanted to touch it. They couldn't see any potential with it, or they didn't want to take the risk. So if you don't have people like me and you take away the incentive to come here, then yeah, I don't think it's really going to be any benefit at all, just detrimental.
So I guess you already touched a bit upon it, but summarized, if these new requirements had been in place at the time you started your adventure here in Japan, your adventure out in Shakotan, would you have still made the jump? Would you still have started your business here?
No, I don't think so. I think I would have looked, Indonesia would have been completely out of bounds for me because it was just too high. But I also understand why those countries do it. They're trying to not flood the market for the lower people. Like, if you allow every foreigner to come in at a really low rate, you're going to kill all your local people's trade. So I understand why they do it. In Japan, you don't have anyone to take over. There's a population that's declining. It's already hard for businesses to find a workforce. Soon you're going to have around 600,000 small and medium-sized businesses. Japanese are going to close in the next few years because there's no successors. So I don't think Japan has the luxury to increase this amount.
And I agree on that completely. Do you have any concluding thoughts or points you want to make before we wrap up?
There's lots of things to talk about, really. I think what my recommendation would be, I think this regulation needs to change. I've been running this business and I've tried lots and lots of different businesses, and every time I come into touch with the bureaucracy, it's a very overcomplicated, over-regulated system which you can't access. There's a lot of stuff I would like to do with terms of slaughtering chickens and producing a free-range chicken meat, but for me to get a license to kill chickens, for example, is like vet standard grade. So it's basically impossible for me to access. I'd have to go back to school for 5 years or so just to study to do that. Doesn't make any sense. Whereas if you look at comparatively with European standards, they give you a really, really good structure of how to do it. They tell you what you need. Yes, of course, they're thinking about animal welfare, but there's ways for us to get around it rather than just blanket rules like vet standard has to do it or monopolizing with the huge, huge chicken companies. I think they should look at the tax system. Japan is focusing mainly on corporate tax and social securities, which again, completely opposite to other Asian countries where their corporate taxes are lower, but they focus more on generating income from consumption taxes. Their social security is a lot less. The wages elsewhere are a lot less. In Japan, you're still paying relatively high wages and your staffing risk becomes obviously higher. That's if you can find staff in the first place in these areas. There's a few different issues why I can't find staff. Mainly all of the young kids are moving out of the countryside. The cultural aspect, to be honest, I've had a lot of racist comments like we don't want to work for a foreigner. And that even goes for services too. I've had recently, I couldn't get my car shack-end, right, with my local garage, who actually took my reservation and then a few days later phoned up and cancelled and said he's now busy with locals. The implication is that I'm not local enough after being here 5 or 6 years. So I think it's just important that whoever's making these rules has to first understand the problems, make a list of all the things they're kind of wanting to achieve, and then understanding barriers involved and trying to come up with more effective ways to make life a bit more appealing and attractive for people to come here and spend their money, right? That's what they're asking for. They're asking for you to come and spend your money and live here, but you don't want to live here as guests forever. I appreciate we come to this country and yeah, we are guests in the beginning, but is there any way that we can integrate into the society by performing as good human beings, paying our taxes? Yes, learning language is important. I kind of do agree with this
I understand that
proficiency they're adding. Yeah, I do understand that. You do have to learn the language and try to integrate here. But on the other flip side of it is they have to be more welcoming. Like in this town, there's been tons and tons of people that didn't speak to me because they thought I was scary or they thought I didn't speak Japanese. I thought, well, if you just ask me, then maybe you can see I can speak to a certain level and we can have a conversation. I'm not this scary person. Well, I don't think I am, but maybe I am. But yeah, I think there's this negotiation that has to happen, and there's lots of cultural barriers we've got to break down, as well as systematic barriers, bureaucratic barriers, tons and tons of stuff to talk about that I don't think this new proposed changes really addresses.
Thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get back to the quadruple full-time job it is to run a farm out in Dinaka. And then there was me. Hi, my name is Victor. For those of you that don't know, I am the co-founder of a Danish travel tech startup called Trip.com, and over here in Sapporo, Hokkaido, where I arrived as the first startup visa holder more than 2.5 years ago now. I am the founder and owner of a software consultancy called Guramu Software, and I am also the founder of a local organization called Hokkaido Entrepreneurship Expo, a Hokkaido entrepreneurship promotion and event hosting organization that hosts bi-yearly pitch events, more or less, and social gatherings like the Hokkaido Entrepreneurship Meal Club and Beers and Complaining, just scattered throughout the year. All of it to bring more people together, build bridges in our environment, both among the international founders and the local founders. Aside from that, I also engage in a okay amount of startup mentoring here as a part of the Holt Prize program, multiple years, both as a keynote speaker and as a mentor and as a judge, something I take a lot of joy and a lot of pride in doing, hoping to just grow the entrepreneurship scene over here further than it currently is. The proposed changes would, depending a bit on how they are implemented, negatively affect my ability to stay in the country as well. I am fairly certain that if they decide to very harshly enforce it from day one, that I will be rejected from my next visa extension. And even if there is given some leeway, in general, the requirements are just too steep for a business like mine that are deciding to stay small by design to survive and to maintain a residency here in the country. And if these requirements had been in place when I initially got the offer to come over here on the startup visa, when I initially got my business manager visa, would I have still made the jump, make the gamble on Japan? For me, that is a hard no, just like everyone else in the video so far. Making this video so far, making these interviews and hearing the voices of the people directly affected by these proposed changes has been a pleasure, and I want to thank all three of the interviewees, Colin, Matt, and Ashley, for their time and for their voice and for just doing this so that other people may know more about what's going on and how people are actually affected by these decisions, by these proposed changes to the business manager visa. I resonate personally with a lot of the points made by them throughout the video. I think there is something larger at stake than just setting higher capital requirements. I fear that this will be detrimental to the business culture in Japan. I fear Japan will lose entrepreneurs like Colin, like Matt, like Ashley, like me, people who are doing more than just running a business, but going beyond that and being heavily involved in their communities and in the area that they reside in. Colin is the only person in the entirety of northern Japan who can do the repairs he's doing. He's actively engaged in the musician scene here, both as a gig attendee, but also on stage himself. He's a phenomenal guitarist. Matt is such a special case. Every person I know in this city is through Matt. He's the most well-connected man in Sapporo. And there's a tangible difference in how lively Sapporo is from a pure amount of event perspective between when Matt is here and when he's not. And the kind of place that his coffee shop hopefully will still get to be, but might end up not being, would have been a massive asset to Sapporo's cultural environment. And the case for Ashley, like Kamui Farms is quite famous in Sapporo, in Hokkaido. And when I plan trips out to the northwest of Hokkaido, it's never really starting from, oh, I should go visit Shakotan, even though Shakotan is lovely, don't get me wrong. Like, it always starts with, we should go to Kamui Farm and then go see what else is going on out there. And in the same vein for myself, gonna be doing some humble bragging here, but for a good cause, so I hope it's okay. Obviously, you're gonna get less of the kinds of entrepreneurs that will be dedicating their free time to organizing events, to trying to grow the scene here for everyone, to grow the community here, and to mentor new startups. I still do believe that the issue that they are trying to solve with these proposed changes is real. I don't think it's as big as it's being presented as being. I know for a fact that the business manager visa holders account for 0.03% of the entire population of Japan. So I doubt that even if we were all getting up early and just brainstorming purely how can we abuse the system and take from Japan without giving back, that we would have any really meaningful ramifications upon the ability for the Japanese system to function. And as you've seen with these interviews, and as I'm sure many of you know personally, both maybe as business manager visa holders or friends of people that hold the visa, this isn't the case. It's a very small minority that is now leading to lawmakers in Japan proposing pretty much just eradicating this entire group of people from the country, a very potentially valuable visa in many ways. I think if the proposed changes are passed, the outcome will be that Japan will have significantly fewer applicants for the business manager visa. And I think what will naturally happen is that it will start being, as Colin talked about, these much larger, much more cynical enterprise size, not really startups, but just large businesses. And I think most of them will be settling down in Tokyo at that price point and then that level of gamble and commitment that they're asking you to make, which means you'll also just get fewer businesses opened in areas like Hokkaido, which is a fairly remote region by all means and measures, even though Sapporo is the 5th biggest city in the country, and even more so out in an area like Shakutan where Kamui Farms is. I just don't think there'll be anyone left to open the companies out there. And on that note, I am going to start wrapping up. I'd like to encourage anyone that felt this video resonated with them to please go and submit public comments on the proposal. The opening runs until September 24th, until and including September 24th. So that gives you a week from now, or 6 days if my editing pace is a bit on the low side. We'll see. Please do also share and sign the petition. The petition itself is not going to make any measurable difference in the decision process of lawmakers in Japan, but I will be submitting it as supporting evidence on my own public comment on the deadline day, containing all of the signatures, all of the content we've made, the comments, just to show that there is a lot of attention to this. There's a lot of people that care about it. But for sure, the biggest difference you can make is help create more awareness, make sure that the people you know that are capable of submitting public comments know about the situation and know where they can go to submit their opinion on it. And hopefully we can manage to dial back the severity of the proposed changes significantly, because Japan deserves the kind of entrepreneurs we're having right now. I think there's so many special people gambling everything on this country who wants to do good things here and who are doing great things here. And it would be heartbreaking to see that disappear, both the people currently here, but also thinking of all of the people we wouldn't get. And obviously the threat of losing my own residency here, losing my life here, and the heartbreak at seeing so many people deal with that same fear. I think it's just not worth it for an issue that the Japanese government, according to the Japan Times article on the matter, don't even have statistics for how big it is. I hope you enjoyed this rather heavy information-dense video. I hope it was able to tell some stories about here in Hokkaido running businesses and how they would be affected by the changes. And I hope you'll help spread it around and maybe make your own video of the same style from your prefecture if you also know a bunch of people in this situation. I think spreading awareness is still the best thing we can do, and submitting public comments if we can. And with that, I will say good evening for me. I'll get back to editing and hopefully this will be out exactly 1 week before the deadline at the latest.